T.I. explaining himself. They only responding because, hit dogs holler. Now, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. T.I., T.I.'s son, they supposed to think that that's beauty, but I think deep down inside, T.I., he know what it is.
50 Cent posted a title on Instagram. Just a title. No trailer, no footage, no announcement. Surviving T.I. and Tiny. He deleted it minutes later, but the screenshot was already everywhere. And in those few minutes, the entire feud between him and T.I. shifted from a rap battle into something with real long-term consequences. Because a diss track trends for 2 weeks, a documentary lives on a streaming platform for years, gets recommended to people who never followed the original beef, and becomes part of how someone's legacy gets described permanently. That's why that deleted post hit harder than any bar either man has dropped. Here's how the feud built to that moment, and why the documentary angle is the most dangerous move in this entire conflict. The tension between these two goes back to 2007, when T.I. was arrested on federal weapons charges involving machine guns and silencers. The charges were serious. What followed was a sentence that many people in hip-hop considered surprisingly light. 50 Cent noticed. Over the years, he kept referencing it. In lyrics, in interviews, in social media posts, planting the implication without always saying it directly. In rap culture, even indirect suggestions about cooperation with federal authorities carry weight that doesn't fade easily. For years, the rivalry stayed in the background. Then, in early 2026, T.I. reignited it during a podcast appearance where he claimed 50 had agreed to a versus battle and then backed out. The comments spread fast. He called it ducking the smoke. That framing, 50 Cent avoiding a direct challenge, was designed to hit somewhere sensitive. 50 responded, but not the way anyone expected. Instead of arguing about music catalogs, he posted an old Crime Stoppers public service clip featuring T.I. speaking about crime prevention in Atlanta. The implication was immediate and clear to anyone familiar with hip-hop politics. Within minutes, it was on every blog. Fans who had heard the whispers for years suddenly had fresh content to debate, and the 2007 federal case was back in active circulation. T.I. fired back directly, accusing 50 of hypocrisy and suggesting he had documents that could flip the same accusation back. The message was plain. If this is the game we're playing, I have cards too. At that point, the feud had moved past music. Then, 50 made it personal. He posted an unflattering image of Temeka Tiny Harris on Instagram with a caption that read as a direct warning to T.I. to keep his name out of the conversation. Taking a shot at someone's spouse in a public feud is a specific kind of escalation. It signals that nothing is off limits and forces the other person to respond on an emotional level rather than a strategic one. It worked. The first response didn't come from T.I., it came from his son. King Harris went live on Instagram almost immediately. What started as a defense of his mother turned into something that made even people who had no opinion on the feud stop and react. During the stream, King brought up 50 Cent's late mother, who was murdered when 50 was 8 years old, and referenced her death directly. Then, in a diss video released shortly after, he appeared wearing a shirt with her image on it. The reaction split the internet in a specific way. Some people understood the impulse. Someone insulted his mother publicly, and he responded with maximum force. Others, including some people who support the Harris family, said the shirt crossed into territory that has its own rules in hip-hop regardless of what started the conflict. T.I. eventually addressed it himself, saying that while he respected his sons defending their mother, the shirt was the moment things went past a line he recognized. 50's public response was calibrated silence and memes. No diss track, no emotional reaction, just sarcastic posts that kept him trending without making him look reactive. To people who understand how he operates, that restraint was a signal, not that he was backing down, but that he was choosing a different arena entirely. Then, King posted what he claimed were FBI documents. According to the caption, the papers suggested that 50 Cent had spoken to federal investigators during a criminal case connected to 2009. The implication was direct. If 50 wanted to run the cooperation narrative against T.I., King was posting evidence that the same accusation could be aimed the other way. The internet reacted fast. Some people examined the documents closely and questioned whether they were authentic. Others argued that even if real, the context needed to be understood. That speaking to investigators about a case where you were a victim or witness is legally and ethically different from what 50 had been implying about T.I. for years. 50 Cent did not address the documents directly. He posted nothing that acknowledged them substantively. Whether that was because the documents didn't concern him, because he had a legal reason to stay quiet, or because he was already focused on a different move entirely, nobody outside his circle knows. What he did instead was post that title. To understand why Surviving T.I. and Tiny carried the weight it did, you need the context it was built on. In 2021, Sabrina Peterson, an entrepreneur with a prior public conflict involving the Harris family, made accusations that spread rapidly online. Her post triggered a larger wave. Multiple women came forward with allegations describing incidents they said took place over a span of years at private events connected to T.I. and Tiny. Attorneys representing some of the accusers said more than 20 people had reached out with similar accounts. The allegations included claims that women were brought into private settings where substances were involved and where they felt pressured in ways they had not agreed to. Legal representatives sent letters requesting formal investigations in California and Georgia. Authorities in Los Angeles reviewed some of the claims. The legal path was difficult. Most of the alleged incidents had occurred years earlier, and in many cases, prosecutors determined the statute of limitations had expired. A civil lawsuit filed in 2024 was eventually dismissed after the plaintiffs stopped responding to court filings. T.I. and Tiny denied every accusation throughout the entire process, releasing statements describing the claims as coordinated attempts to damage their reputation. No criminal charges have been filed against them in connection with any of those allegations, but the accusations never fully disappeared from public memory. They went quiet. They stopped being the active story. And that gap between public awareness and public memory is exactly the space a documentary is designed to reopen. The title Surviving T.I. and Tiny was chosen to trigger a specific association. Surviving R. Kelly was a documentary series that didn't introduce information that wasn't already publicly available. What it did was organize existing allegations into interviews, timelines, and first-person accounts that tens of millions of people watched and responded to emotionally. It gave shape and sequence to a story that had existed in scattered form for years. The cultural impact was permanent and severe. A documentary about the Harris family accusations would be attempting the same operation with the same ingredients, and 50 Cent is not someone without the means to do it. His production company built the Power franchise into one of the most watched crime dramas on cable television across multiple seasons and spin-offs. He understands narrative construction, platform distribution, and how to build an audience for a story. The threat isn't theoretical. It comes from someone who has already proven he can produce content that reaches millions. The post was deleted within minutes. That almost certainly wasn't an accident. A deleted post from someone with 50's following doesn't disappear. It spreads faster precisely because it was deleted. The removal becomes part of the story. People treat it as confirmation that something real is being planned, that lawyers got involved, that the platform pushed back. Whether any of that is true doesn't matter. The idea is now installed in the public's head, and every time the feud comes up, that title gets mentioned alongside it. I responded to the documentary threat the way he's responded to most of the escalations in this feud, directly and without visible panic. He said publicly that if 50 wanted to go doc for doc, he was prepared to respond with a project of his own. He framed it as a challenge rather than a threat, suggesting he had material on 50 Cent that could be organized the same way. Whether that's a genuine counterproduction or a psychological bluff is impossible to know from the outside. What it signals is that T.I. understands the real battlefield has moved. This isn't about who has the better rap catalog. It's about who controls the narrative of the other person's legacy at a mass audience level. That's a different kind of war, and both men seem to know it. Right now, no documentary titled Surviving T.I. and Tiny has been officially announced, released, or confirmed by any platform. What exists is a deleted screenshot and the ongoing conversation it created. But 50 Cent has a specific pattern when it comes to major moves. He lets the idea circulate, allows the public to do the emotional work of imagining what's coming, and waits until the moment of maximum impact to act. The feud may still play out in music. More diss tracks are possible. More social media exchanges are almost certain, but the center of gravity has shifted. The most consequential move in this conflict won't happen on a streaming platform that hosts songs. It'll happen on one that hosts documentaries. Do you think the documentary is real and coming, or was the post a calculated way to win a news cycle without releasing a single bar? Drop your take in the comments. Subscribe for more breakdowns on the real moves behind hip hop's biggest feuds.